Okay, let's dive in. Today, we're looking at something really relevant, using ancient wisdom from the Bhagavad Gita to tackle a very modern problem,
Yeah, we're focusing on chapter 5 and how its teachings can help us, deal with overthinking.
which feels like it's everywhere these days. So we've looked at several sources, articles, commentaries from places like Chinmaya International Foundation, Vaida Vedanta experts, Swami Ramsuktas.
Astra Saga, too, with some practical angles. It's a good mix.
Right. And the goal for us here is to really unpack those key ideas from Chapter 5 and see how they offer, well, genuine tools for calming that constant mental chatter.
Because overthinking isn't just thinking a lot, is it? It's that loop, that anxious spiral.
Exactly. It's stressful, causes anxiety, just leaves you feeling drained.
But the Gita, well, it's this incredible philosophical guide. It offers a way through that.
So what we want to do is pull out maybe 5 core lessons from these sources
Look at the verses, the commentary around them.
and really connect it back to you, the listener. How can you actually use this stuff to get out of your head and find a bit more peace?
Sounds good. And it really starts with understanding this tension between action and maybe inaction, or how we relate to action.
Yeah, like Arjuna's big question right at the start of Chapter 5, Gita 5.1. He basically asked Krishna, okay, what's better? Should I renounce action altogether, karma sannyasa, or should I act but without attachment, karma yoga?
It's such a relatable question, isn't it? Like, if doing things causes stress and worry, should I just stop?
Right. If I just withdraw, maybe the overthinking stops too.
And Krishna's answer right away in verse 5.2 is fascinating.
Yeah.
He says, look, both paths, renouncing action and acting without attachment, they both lead to the same ultimate goal, liberation.
So it's not that one is universally superior.
Well, he clarifies. He says they both lead there, but for most people, especially someone like Arjuna in that situation, karma yoga, acting with detachment, is actually the more practical, even better path to start with.
Okay, so it's about accessibility maybe.
Exactly. Gita 5.4 and 5.5 really drive this home. Krishna says only, well, children, or the less discerning, see them as totally separate paths. The wise understand they produce the same result.
Because the real goal isn't just stopping physical activity.
No, it's about the inner state. The Chinmaya commentary calls karma yoga a forerunner, like essential prep work. Formal sannyasa, fully renouncing action, requires a level of dispassion, a kind of mental toughness that most haven't developed yet.
Which leads to that definition in 5.3 of a perpetual sannyasin. It's not about what you do or don't do externally.
Precisely. A true sannyasin, it says, is someone who neither hates nor desires, someone free from those pairs of opposites, pleasure, pain, success, failure, that inner balance, nerdvanva.
So you could be living a full life, engaged in activity, but internally you possess that state of renunciation.
That's the idea. And that freedom from constant liking and disliking, that's what starts to dismantle the engine of overthinking, right? Because overthinking feeds on those desires and fears.
Okay, so if that inner state is the goal, how do we move towards it? This brings us to our first big lesson from the sources for overthinking.
Lesson 1. Focus on the action, not the outcome.
This feels fundamental. So much overthinking is getting lost in the what-ifs.
Totally. What might happen? What could go wrong? What if I succeed? What if I fail? We obsess over results we often can't fully control.
And we forget the only place we have real influence is now, in the action itself.
Exactly. And that famous verse, Karmanya vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana.
Your right is to the action alone, never to its fruits. The Times of India article really flags this for anxiety reduction.
It's key. It doesn't mean don't care about quality or don't plan. It means recognize where your control actually lies. Put your energy, your focus, your skill into the doing.
Into present moment.
Right. By doing that, you automatically have less mental energy available for that future tripping, that anxiety spiral.
It's like channeling the mental energy productively instead of letting it spin out.
Yes. And there's a practical tip from Astra Saga here, which I like. Before starting something, mentally offer the action.
Offer it how?
You could offer it to the divine, if that resonates, or just dedicate it to a larger purpose, like may this work help someone, or may this contribute positively.
Ah, so it shifts the focus off your personal gain or fear.
Precisely. It lessens the ego's grip on the outcome, making it easier to just focus on doing your best in the process.
That's a really useful tool. Okay, building right on that, the second lesson is embrace detachment.
And again, detachment here doesn't mean being aloof or uncaring. Our sources are clear on that.
It's more about freedom. Freedom from being yanked around emotionally by every success or failure.
Exactly. Overthinking thrives on intense desires. I must have this outcome. And intense fears, I cannot let that happen. Detachment is about loosening that emotional grip.
So the teaching is let go of controlling the uncontrollable. Try to maintain that inner evenness, right? That equanimity.
Yes, and this connects to a really deep, maybe challenging concept in Chapter 5, Akartritva.
Akartritva. That's the idea of I do nothing at all. From verses 5.8 and 5.9.
Uh-huh.
That one always makes me pause. How can I think I do nothing when I'm clearly, well, doing things?
Yeah.
Like talking right now.
It's a profound shift in identification. It's seeing things from the perspective of the Yoga Yukta, the one whose consciousness is unified.
Gita 5.7 describes this person pure of mind, conquered senses, sees the self in everyone.
Right. From that vantage point, the body, the mind, the senses, they are instruments. Action happens through them. But the true self, the pure awareness, isn't the limited ego that says, I did this, and then worries endlessly about the consequences.
So verses 5.8 and 9 list all sorts of actions. Seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, walking, sleeping, breathing, talking.
Even opening and closing the eyes.
And it says the one who knows the truth, the Tathagata, thinks I do nothing at all while doing all these things.
It's like the actions are unfolding, but the identification isn't with the ego as the sole author and owner of those actions.
So Gita 5.11 talks about the yogi acting with the body, mind, intellect, even senses. But, Swami Ramsuktas points out, it's without that sense of mind, without the ego claiming ownership.
Yes. Acting Sangam Taktva, abandoning attachment for Atma Shuddhai for self-purification. The motivation changes. The identification changes.
And this relates to being a witness, Sakshi Bhava, that practice that Chinmaya commentary mentions.
Absolutely. Being the witness. Overthinking is often the mind getting lost in its own stories, believing every thought. Sakshibhava is stepping back.
Observing the thoughts, the feeling.
Without getting swept away, you notice the thought, oh no, what if this fails? But you don't become the panic. You don't automatically buy into the whole narrative. You just see it, observe it.
Okay, so detachment applies to the action and also to how you receive the results.
Definitely. It's about accepting whatever comes, seeing it almost like prasad, a gift or consequence from a process larger than your ego. This is where samatva buddhi, that equanimity, comes in again.
Because if you accept the result, you stop the mental replays,
Yeah.
should-haves, the what-ifs.
Exactly. You cut off the fuel for that kind of overthinking.
Gita 5.13 paints a picture of the embodied one in the nine-gated city, the body who sits happily inside, having relinquished activities by the mind.
Yeah, the Vasi, the master within, the self, is inherently peaceful, untouched. Actions happen through the body-mind, driven by nature's impulses, svabhava. But that inner awareness can remain neutral.
Not claiming ownership, not suffering the consequences in the same way.
Right. Realizing you're the master of the house, not just the frantic ego running around worrying, creates distance from the mental noise. Overthinking is the mind's activity.
But if I'm not ultimately the doer in that sense, then what is?
Well, verses 5.14-15 offer a perspective on this. It says the Supreme Lord, Prabhu or Vibha, doesn't actually create our sense of agency or the actions or the link between action and fruit.
So God isn't micromanaging my every action and its result.
According to this verse, no. It says svabhava, the inherent nature or cosmic process, is what functions. Our delusion, the feeling that we are the sole doer burdened by outcomes, stems from ignorance, ajnana, veiling our true nature, jnana.
Swami Ramsukta says it's mistaking ourselves for prakriti, for nature, due to ignorance.
Right. Understanding this helps loosen the ego's tight grip, which is, let's face it, a huge source of the pressure that leads to overthinking.
And this view even shifts how we see things like good deeds and bad deeds,
Yeah.
merit and demerit.
Yes. Gita 5.15 says the Supreme doesn't take on anyone's virtue or sin. And the Chinmaya commentary has that great point. Even good deeds, Sukratam, can be like a golden chain. It still binds you to the cycle of expectation and result.
Whereas sin, Papam, is maybe like a pothole, not eternal damnation.
Exactly. It's about stepping back from that constant mental scorekeeping of, am I doing good? Am I doing bad? What will happen because of it? That scorekeeping fuels anxiety.
This all flows really well into the third lesson. Cultivate a stable mind, Sthitaprajna.
Yeah, because if overthinking is mental turbulence, the antidote is mental stability.
A mind that isn't constantly thrown off balance by, well, life. The ups and downs. The Times of India piece mentions this.
It's about training the mind to remain centered, to respond thoughtfully rather than react emotionally.
Gita 5.20 describes this state beautifully. The sthira buddhi asamudha, the one with a steady, undiluted intellect.
And it says this person doesn't get overly excited or appreciate when something pleasant happens, nor do they get agitated or grieve, not veget, when something unpleasant occurs.
Because their intellect is steady, sthirabhuddhi, and clear, asamudha. They're grounded in a deeper reality, established in Brahman.
They still experience the pleasant and unpleasant, of course. Life happens.
But they aren't hijacked by the emotional reaction.
That's the key point Swami Ramsukdas makes. The liberated person is aware of pleasant or unpleasant encounters, but they don't accept the modifications, the liking, disliking, the joy, the sorrow into their core identity, into their mind and ego.
So awareness is okay, but internalizing and identifying with the reaction is the problem.
That's where the suffering and often the overthinking loop starts.
And this inner stability seems connected to how they view the world, too.
Definitely. It leads right into Samadarsena, equal vision, in Gita 5.1e.
Seeing the same self in everyone. The verse lists a learned person, a cow, an elephant, a dog, an outcast.
The wise see the same underlying reality, the same divine spark in all of them.
But hang on, that doesn't mean you treat a dog exactly like you treat a scholar, does it? That wouldn't be practical or even kind.
Exactly. And Swami Ramsukdas provides that vital clarification. It's Samadarshina, same sight, equal vision of the inner reality. It is not Samavartina, same behavior.
Okay, so your actions are appropriate to the person or being in front of you, but your inner perception sees the unity.
Right. This internal vision cuts through prejudices, comparisons, judgments, so much of the stuff that fuels anxious thoughts about status and difference.
And that equal vision naturally leads to equanimity, Samya, mentioned in 5.19.
Yes. If you see the same self everywhere, your mind naturally settles into a state of balance. The verse says, those whose minds rest in this equanimity have basically conquered the world, conquered creation, right here and now.
Wow. Not by changing the world, but by changing their mind's relationship to it.
Precisely. Their mind reflects the nature of Brahman, flawless and equal. That inner stability is the direct counter to the chaos of overthinking.
Okay, lesson number 4 feels like a huge relief valve for many overthinkers. Surrender to a higher power.
It really can be. So much overthinking stems from feeling like you are solely responsible for everything, that the weight of every decision, every outcome rests entirely on your shoulders.
The illusion of control, right?
Exactly. Surrendering that perceived burden to, a divine will or a larger universal process, whatever resonates, it allows faith to come in and reduces that immense mental pressure. The Times of India points this out.
So the practice is consciously letting go, cultivating trust.
Yes. Letting go of that desperate need to micromanage reality. And the final verse of chapter 5, Gita 5.29, gives the understanding that fosters this peace.
What's that understanding?
Knowing the Lord, or the ultimate reality, as the true enjoyer of all our efforts, the great power overseeing all worlds, and most importantly, the friend, Suridam, of all beings.
Seeing the universe not as indifferent or hostile, but as having this underlying benevolent presence, this friend, that must change things.
It's a massive shift. The commentaries point out, for someone devotionally inclined, focusing on the greatness of the Lord shrinks the ego, which loves to worry. For a knowledge seeker, seeing that Lord as the very self within everyone makes that higher power incredibly intimate, the closest friend possible.
So that practical tip from earlier, offering your actions before you start, that's a small act of surrender in daily life.
It absolutely is. Each time you do it, you're gently shifting from it's all on me to I do my part and trust the rest. It takes the pressure off, which starves the overthinking habit.
Okay, and our 5th and final lesson from this chapter for dealing with overthinking. Accept impermanence.
This one hits hard too. Overthinking often magnifies problems, makes them feel solid, permanent, like they'll last forever.
But the Gita consistently reminds us, nothing external lasts. Challenges pass, joys pass. Times of India.
It's about gaining that broader perspective, that classic wisdom. This too shall pass.
Gita 5.22 is really direct about pleasures derived from the senses, isn't it? Samsparsabhoga.
Very direct. It calls them dukkhayanaya, literally wombs of pain.
Wombs of pain. Why so strong?
Because, the verse explains, they have a beginning and an end, ajantavanta. They are temporary by nature. So the wise person, Buddha, doesn't delight nadramate in them.
Because chasing fleeting pleasures inevitably leads to disappointment or suffering when they end.
Exactly. Or even while you have them, there's the fear of losing them or the effort needed to sustain them. Swami Ramsukdas notes they are temporary, rely on external things, they tire us out. Chasing them keeps the mind agitated, constantly thinking about getting or keeping.
But the Gita contrasts this with a different kind of happiness.
Yes, Gita 5.21 speaks of the joy found within Atmani by the person who is detached from external contacts, a pure sattvic joy.
And then it says, the one whose self is united with Brahman through yoga, Brahma Yoga Yuktatma, enjoys akayam sukham, inexhaustible, eternal bliss.
That inner joy isn't dependent on fleeting external circumstances, so it doesn't fuel that anxious cycle of gain and loss that overthinking latches onto.
But to find that inner peace, we have to deal with the immediate storms inside, right? Like desire and anger.
Absolutely crucial. Gita 5.23 tackles this head-on. It talks about the vigam, the impulse, the force, the surge born of kama, desire, craving, and krodha, anger, aversion.
These are the things that can instantly trigger an overthinking spiral. Someone cuts you off in traffic, boom, anger, then replaying it.
Yeah.
Or you desperately want something, boom, craving, then obsessing.
Exactly. And the verse presents a challenge, a standard. The person who can withstand this impulse here in this life before leaving the body,
That person is a yogi. That person is truly happy. Sayukta Sukhinara.
It's about developing inner strength. Swami Ram Sukta stresses resisting the impulse at the very beginning. Don't let it gain momentum.
The Chinmaya commentary uses that analogy of a cricket batsman facing fast bowling, or a soldier holding the line. It takes courage and focus.
It does. It's moment-to-moment heroism, really. Learning to notice that initial spark of anger or craving and choosing not to fan the flames, not to let it erupt into a full-blown mental drama.
And mastering this, resisting these impulses, is directly linked to finding that inner happiness.
Yes, Gita 5.24 follows immediately. The one who finds happiness within, Antasuko, whose joy is internal, Antaramas, whose light is within, Antarjyotir, that yogi becomes Brahman, Brahmabhuto, and attains ultimate freedom, Brahmanirvarai.
So Brahma Nirvana, this absolute freedom, is the ultimate state described.
It is. Verses 5.25 and 26 tell us who reaches it. The sages, whose imperfections are destroyed, whose doubts, duality are cut through, Chinadaitha, who are self-controlled. Yatadmana, and this is beautiful, who are dedicated to the welfare of all beings. Sarvaputta.
That dedication to everyone's well-being flows naturally from realizing the self in all.
Seems to be a key outcome, as the commentaries note. When the ego dissolves, that universal compassion arises.
And this freedom, this nirvana, isn't just an afterlife thing.
No, verse 26 explicitly says this freedom exists abhita on all sides, meaning both here while living, jivanmukti, and after death. It's attainable now.
For those who are free from desire and anger, whose minds are controlled, who have realized the self.
Exactly.
And the chapter kind of ends by pointing the way towards that realization, giving some practical steps, almost like a teaser for chapter 6.
It does. Verses 5.27-28 briefly outline meditation prerequisites. Shut out external distractions, focus the gaze internally, regulate the breath, control the senses, mind, intellect.
All aimed at achieving liberation, free from desire, fear, and anger.
Yeah, it sets the stage for the deeper dive into meditation practices that quiet the mind.
So wrapping up this deep dive into chapter 5.
Yeah.
Wow. It really lays out a powerful roadmap, doesn't it? Moving from being swamped by overthinking to finding genuine clarity and stability.
It absolutely does. It's not just abstract philosophy. It's incredibly practical psychology, shifting from results to effort.
From clinging to detaching.
From a mind tossed about by emotions to a steady, stable mind.
From feeling solely responsible to surrendering to something larger.
And from seeing problems as permanent fixtures to recognizing everything external is transient.
These shifts are fundamental. They
Yeah.
change how you relate to your thoughts, your actions, your entire experience.
It's moving from identifying as that worried, separate doer caught in the mental storm
Towards understanding perhaps a deeper identity that's untouched by it all.
Which brings us back to that powerful, maybe initially confusing idea, Akartritva. If so much overthinking comes from that ingrained belief that I am the doer, I am the controller, I am this separate self being affected by everything, what happens if you seriously, genuinely start to explore the possibility taught here that I do nothing at all? What kind of space might that thought open up in your mind?